Boy has the lowest stats in a new world, yet the demon lord is scared of him. If you dig my recaps, don't forget to subscribe and smash that notification bell. Under a heavy rain, the melancholic air contrasted with the heavy current of the aqueduct where a couple walked as if it were a beautiful sunny day in the park. As they approached the rapids, the man said this was the true man-eating river. Leaning on his arm, the woman beside him called out for the sensei to leave, so they tied a rope connecting their wrists, and thus the man declared they would be together forever. Suddenly, a runaway truck appeared on the muddy road and ran over the couple. On this day, a certain great author and his lover left this world. After this tragedy, the man woke up in an unknown sanctuary, looking around with a strange disinterest at his foiled plan. Analyzing the statue of an angel, he supposed this was the world we go to after death, a place with a rather Western style. However, a woman appeared and explained that this was not the destination for the dead. Introducing herself as the guide for those who descend to this world, she said her name was Annette. According to her, the newly deceased was chosen to enter this land, surrounded by darkness Zauberberg, to become a hero who must bring light and hope. Showing no motivation with what was said, the man realized that in other words, besides having failed in his plan to take his life alongside his lover, he was also brought to this strange place without his consent. With a slight laugh, he put his hand on his head and stated that his life had always been a great shame. Without time for the young man's drama, Annette warned that he had an urgent mission to fulfill, but the hero had swallowed several sedatives to leave this life behind. Desperate, Annette detoxified him with her magic, although he didn't like it much. The guide ordered the adventurer to get up to fulfill his destiny of saving this planet, but the renowned author wanted nothing to do with heroism. He just wanted to die, period. While the woman fumed as she explained that he was the chosen one, he gathered the sedatives from the ground and slowly swallowed a few, then laughed sarcastically and emphasized that he hadn't asked to be chosen for anything. Annette asked if he was visited by a truck, and remembering the moment of the accident, he said yes. So she explained that it was the selection truck for the other world running over heroes, who among all the depressed people who lived on planet Earth, only those crushed by the sweet rubber of the tire could start from scratch and build a life truly worth living in this world of adventures. However, in the author's mind, his only chance of being happy was jumping into that stream with his beloved, and that elf with a pope hat ruined everything, saying that he asked who they were to decide whether someone was unhappy or not. Internally, Annette cursed the man for his ingratitude. Anyway, she was sure he would change his mind when he saw the status he gained in this place, because every human brought here receives the ability to wield superhuman powers. The thing is, as soon as she saw the man's status, he was a complete weakling with a measly 1 point of life and poisoned. The guy was practically a walking corpse. Not wanting to let it go, the guide searched every corner of the status for any special ability she might have missed, but all she found were packs of cigarettes, sedatives, and a notebook with a pen in the inventory. There was no way around it. The guy was indeed a human slime with lung cancer. Not that he was disappointed, as he had no expectations, but the author turned his back and announced that he was leaving. Feeling guilty, Annette grabbed his wrist and apologized for everything, assuming they might have brought him by mistake. Given that the guy was extremely weak, she made it clear that he would not survive in this world. Once again, he laughed and replied that this had always been his life, whether in his original world or now. Not wanting to leave the human adrift, Annette asked him to stay inside for now, as going out would expose him to the many dangers outside, but the sensei didn't expect to live. On the contrary, he wouldn't mind giving up everything to never exist again, saying that he turned and left while the guide watched with teary eyes, noting that this human was different from the others. There was a time when Annette took pride in guiding inhabitants from another world, welcoming people with open arms and getting excited to meet all kinds of folks from an alternate reality. Until one day she received an arrogant boy who was one of those employees exploited to the bone by his company, and the idea of becoming a hero went to his head. Arrogant, the kid bragged about everything he did, and every time Annette found herself praising the guy's performance without thinking that maybe she had become just a hero worshiper instead of a woman guiding the representatives of light in this world. So to reverse this situation, she asked Sensei to at least find a profession before leaving, and he turned with a smirk and informed her that he was already a born writer, nothing more, nothing less. He said goodbye to the girl with the pretty ears and left for good. As the sanctuary gate closed, Annette was sure she had been waiting for this man to arrive. Instead of a thrush or a vulture in this world, fierce and aggressive dragon dragons flew in the skies. Beneath them on the ground walked the depressive writer who didn't understand a single thing written on the direction signs. As if that weren't enough, he had no doubt that he would never find a cup of coffee around there. Out of nowhere, some internal system alerted that the guide discovered the landmark Great Plains of Erston, earning him 5 experience points. With a terrible headache, Sensei asked the voice to stop talking inside his ear, but the system then announced that he had leveled up to level 2 using a noisy, heroic symphony in the background. Next, he notices the presence of a death tree holding a girl hostage, and she begs the adventurer for help, assuming that's what he is, of course. However, the writer doesn't lift a finger. He just observes, noting that today is the day he meets people with strange ears. Regardless, he acknowledges that women on the brink of death have a unique charm, so he asks the girl if he can write a romance based on her. She screams to be saved again, and he finally realizes she needs help, so he stretches his arms up to grab her, but his height isn't enough. The girl asks if he has a sword or spell, but just as he's about to answer, Sensei is also grabbed by the death tree. At least he's relieved it's by the neck, because it cuts off his air supply. With little time left, he says it was a pleasure to meet her, but she doesn't feel the same. Pleasure is something they won't experience when the tree uses its suction to steal their life force. In other words, they have only a few minutes to live. Hanging by his neck, this is the news Sensei had prayed for. As he feels weaker, he sings the song, "I Have to Go Now," until his neck bends forward in his final moments. An ominous energy escapes his body, spreading through the death tree's branches until it consumes the entire structure, causing an explosion that frees the prisoners. While Sensei laments not having died, the system announces that 300 damage was inflicted by the adventurer's poison. To make his headache worse, the symphony returns to announce another level up. Curious about all this, the cat girl asks what his deal is because he pretended to be weak, yet after what just happened, he clearly has some sophisticated tricks up his sleeve, but he doesn't answer her question. He just reflects that for the 5th time he asked for death and death did not come. In a way, he doesn't know who's winning this contest. The girl says she doesn't know why the guy is depressed, but she's happy he survived, so she thanks him for the help, invites him to her home, and asks the adventurer's name. He says he's called Sensei, and when the man feels his hand being pulled by the girl, he immediately remembers Seiken, who said the exact same thing the cat girl did when they were about to kill themselves. Thinking about this, he wonders if Seiken also came to this world while repeating his beloved's name over and over. Thinking the guy is calling her by that name, the cat girl tries to correct him by telling her real name, but all Sensei does is repeat Seiken's name. With the arrival of the breeze, the writer finds a reason to live amidst this insanity. Come what may, he will find Seiken wherever she is. With the red string tied around his wrist, he intends to reunite with the woman of his life so they can continue the plan that went wrong last time. Meanwhile, Annette prays to the gods of Zauberberg to protect this adventurer, hoping to meet him again one day. Contrary to her expectations, her wish is granted sooner than she imagined because it was Sensei opening the door at that very moment. Excited even though she met the guy 20 minutes ago, she runs to him like he returned from war after 4 years of marriage until the cat girl shows up behind him, killing the mood. Not wanting to be involved, Sensei announces he's looking for a lady named Seiken, making the guide go crazy with each new woman entering the story. Whether malicious or not, Annette says she has no idea who that is, so Sensei sets off on his quest without a single clue. The cat girl reassures him that she's sure the lady is somewhere around, and since it's still a long way to her house, she invites her companion to make a stop in the city of Roth Castle. With that, she pulls Sensei by the arm, and Annette immediately shows up to teach the feline a lesson, saying it's absurd to hold a man's hand in public. Confused, the cat girl asks why this woman is following them, but the guide has no answer. With that, the short girl assumes Annette has her eye on Sensei, driving Annette crazy, trying to justify herself in every possible way, emphasizing that her job is to guide the inhabitants of the other world. Hearing this, the cat girl discovers Sensei is not from this planet, which explains why he's so strong. Annette is confused because his stats say otherwise, so the girl explains that Sensei killed the Tree of Life with a single attack and saved her life. Imagining that her rescue created an intimate bond between them, Annette starts feeling sick with jealousy, kneeling and exuding a dark aura while cursing the cat girl. Ignoring the drama, Sensei finds a perfect bed for himself and announces he's going to take a nap and to wake him when they reach the city. He bids farewell to Annette and Tama before closing the coffin. The cat girl complains that's not her name, making the guide laugh and boast she was called by the correct name. The journey truly begins with Annette pulling Sensei's coffin by a rope, which snaps from the force she exerted. In the late afternoon, in a palace located somewhere in this unknown world, a young maiden gazes at the beautiful sea view from a balcony. Returning to Sensei, the girls had been dragging the boy for so long that the cat girl lost her patience and told him to walk on his own, but there was no response. Annette checked to see if the guy had died, but his status indicated he was just taking a nap. Since they were close to their destination, the elf asked Tama to carry the coffin again, which made the cat girl complain once more that that wasn't her name. Inside the coffin, Sensei dreamed of having his beloved Sakin in his arms again so they could finish what they had started. After some time, the group arrived in the city of Roth, and the writer began to grasp that he was in a completely different world. This realization sparked his artistic side with all the things he could never have imagined seeing in his life. Amidst this, Annette announced she would request an audience with the king. Once in the throne room, the supreme ruler of Roth introduced himself as Thomas alongside his daughter Charlotte. The king offered the group accommodations in the castle for the night, which made the travelers smile, but there was a condition. Since he loved hearing stories from travelers, he wished the adventurers would share their experiences and memories with him. Considering he had just arrived and wasn't the most proactive adventurer in the world, Sensei asked if it was enough to talk about what it was like to sleep in a coffin, making Thomas think it was a death threat. To divert attention from this topic, Annette commented that Princess Charlotte was very beautiful, and besides thanking for the compliment, the king informed them that she would soon be married. Moreover, he wanted to ask for advice about it. Before explaining further, he asked two men to enter the throne room. According to the sovereign, there were two candidates for the princess's hand, the brave knight Gomez and Otto, the wandering minstrel of love. The king explained that perhaps due to the influence of the demon king of wrath, monster activity had recently increased. Considering his age, Thomas couldn't deal with this great threat alone. Therefore, one of these two would become Charlotte's husband, and the next king who would face the threats to Roth alongside the future queen. However, since the princess had not yet chosen which option she wanted, Thomas would like the candidates to weigh in. After pondering this matter for a few seconds, Sensei said he had no idea, as this choice would determine the future of the princess and the kingdom as a whole, and it shouldn't be placed on the shoulders of strangers who had just arrived and were unknown to everyone. To conclude, Sensei commented that Thomas was a horrible tyrant king who didn't deserve the crown he wore. With that said, the two women accompanying the boy tried to smooth over the situation in every way, explaining that this guy came from another world and didn't know how to behave appropriately in this place. At night, the writer gazed out the window of his room with a melancholic expression until Annette woke up and asked if he was having trouble sleeping. In truth, Sensei confessed that he never could sleep, which left the elf speechless for a moment. Stammering, she asked who this Sakin he always talked about was, but before he could answer, the cat girl's tail poked out from under the blanket, revealing that she had been sleeping on the writer's lap the whole time. Annoyed by this, Annette scolded the girl for resting on a gentleman's legs, while the cat girl argued that she was protecting herself from the cold because that's what her kind did. Furthermore, she accused the elf of being jealous, which was why she was making such a fuss. In the middle of their argument, Sensei left the room to get some air and decided to take a walk around the castle. On the same balcony she occupied most of her days, Charlotte was contemplating the view of the water under the moonlight, and Sensei arrived commenting that the landscape was indeed wonderful. In fact, the lake was so beautiful it made him want to drown in it, according to his words. Charlotte expressed her indignation at these death-related words, which made the boy laugh, since she was far more concerned about his life than he was. Changing the subject as she was worried about her future and the fate of the country, the princess confessed she couldn't choose between Gomez and Otto. The knight, although he had recently arrived in the kingdom, was already beloved by everyone and had become an authority among the soldiers, earning the king's trust. The girl thought she should choose this warrior for these reasons, but on the other hand, Otto was her childhood friend. Whenever she felt depressed, the minstrel sang songs that soothed her soul. Upon hearing this, Sensei noted that Charlotte was a kind girl who cared about her father unlike him. The author's life had been a complete disaster with multiple suicide attempts deeply affecting his parents. Throughout his existence, Sensei had never asked anyone to choose how he should live. With that said, he believed the princess should decide for herself what she truly desired. The next day, the king gathered the group of travelers in the throne room again so they could witness his daughter's decision about the marriage. Annette remarked that for the good of the kingdom, surely the young woman had chosen Gomez, while the cat girl thought the musician suited the princess better. At that moment, Thomas asked his daughter to stand before the chosen man and make her vows. She slowly walked up to Sensei, took his hand, and declared that she would end her life with this man. Everyone around was shocked by the declaration, and Annette even fainted. Charlotte explained that as she had said the previous day, Otto sang songs to her when she was feeling depressed. But when she thought about it, she realized he also appeared when she was fine, even annoying her all night with a new song. Besides that, she didn't want to marry Gomez because the guy had a bit of a strong smell. Desperate, Thomas approaches his daughter and urges her to choose one of the men offered to her. However, his daughter stands her ground and condemns her father's attitude, pointing out that he wants to force her into marriage without even caring about her opinion. In truth, the girl didn't even want to get married, but no one considered her feelings in one of the most important decisions of her life except for the traveling writer. Sensei was the only one who listened to the princess and asked what she wanted to do with her life. In the midst of this, Gomez reveals why he didn't have a pleasant odor, as he removes his armor, revealing himself to be a minotaur, a servant of the demon king of wrath. The monster's initial plan was to ascend to the throne by marrying the princess and then delivering her to his master. But his true identity was discovered. Sensei asks the young woman if she realized the man was a monster, but she had only sensed the foul smell coming from him, nothing more. Embarrassed by the conversation, the Minotaur puts an end to the insults and declares that he no longer needs to ascend the throne, so he will simply kill everyone. As the cat girl tries to wake Annette, the kingdom's guards attack the monster, but they are all easily defeated. A pillar destroyed by the monster's punch almost falls on the elf, but the cat girl saves her just in time. Not taking it lightly, she counterattacks with a knee to the giant bull's face, showing that she won't be defeated as easily as the soldiers. Otto plays a melody called Song of the Nameless Hero, making the cat girl think she was being empowered, but the music was useless, merely adding to the fight's atmosphere. Speaking of which, the Minotaur attacks his opponent with his horns, but she dodges and strikes the bull again. Despite the initial advantage, the cat girl is hit by the enemy's horn, which was extremely strong and sharp. Taking advantage of this weapon's power, the Minotaur announces he will gather all his strength for the next strike. Sensei interrupts the fight by calling the monster a little cow and asks him to kill the kingdom's newest couple first. After all, the princess had rid herself of her idiotic father, and the little cow's fantastic horns seemed the most stylish way to reach the afterlife. Everyone around is shocked by the man's stance, except the Minotaur, who would gladly do as asked, then kill the king, everyone in the room, all the kingdom's citizens, and finally set everything on fire until nothing remained. While Charlotte seems distressed by this statement, Sensei responds that it's fine with him because he won't be alive anyway. Thus, the Minotaur wishes the couple to enjoy life after death and charges at them. However, on the brink of death, Charlotte gives up on the idea and, crying, decides to live and protect the people of this kingdom. Hearing this, Sensei comments that the princess was as kind as he imagined and then pushes the girl out of the horn's path, saying she isn't fit to be his death partner. At this moment, Annette awakens and conjures a strong light barrier that blocks the Minotaur's passage. The elf declares she will never let Sensei die as long as she's around. Besides blocking the attack, the level 18 cleric manages to destroy the enemy's powerful horn, and this time even the cat girl is impressed by her colleague's talent. Calling the cat girl Tama once again, Annette asks her to do her part, so Tama charges at the giant bull with a wildcat strike. The force of this power was so great that it sent the massive creature outside the castle, devastating the wall and throwing him into the lake. When the adrenaline subsides, Tama turns her face away from the elf, awkwardly thanking her for saving her life. Annette smiles and says the same, also thanking her for being saved by the cat girl. Behind them, Otto announces he will turn this friendship into a song, but Tama tells him to run away. While Charlotte watched the landscape she loves through the hole in the wall, her father kneels before his daughter and begs for forgiveness for not considering her feelings at such an important moment. In tears, the king implores the princess's forgiveness, who touches her father's shoulder and says that from now on she wants to be heard regarding the kingdom's problems and her life as a whole. With that said, the two embrace lovingly and cry together in reconciliation. Sensei observes that he failed to die once again. A day later, a soldier alerts about the arrival of monsters near the south gate, so the queen orders her royal guard to exterminate the threat. Sitting on the throne with her crown, she remembers that the kingdom must be protected and relies on her men for this. Then all the soldiers bow and exalt Her Majesty Queen Charlotte. Dragging Sensei once more, his two companions comment on the princess's audacity in becoming the ruler of Roth, but worry about a 16-year-old girl having to deal with the challenges of governing a kingdom and its people. Overhearing the conversation, Sensei comments from inside the coffin that the girl chose this for herself, so they shouldn't worry about anything. Finally, he notes that women on the verge of death are beautiful, but those who rise on their own are equally wonderful. Speaking of which, as the writer is dragged, Tama asks if the guy can walk on his own, being a fan of such a thing. On the other hand, distracted Sensei analyzes the beauty of the blue sky that illuminates his deep dark circles. After a long journey dragging the tomb of the depressed writer, Tama can't take it anymore and needs a break to eat something. When she stops pulling the coffin, Sensei shows up and asks if it's time to eat. Annette gives him some bread and he asks if there's any cooked tofu by chance. The elf has no idea what that is, so the author closes the coffin lid while she writes down the name of the food to look for in the next town. Heading towards groom Tama's hometown, the cleric estimates that they should arrive in a few days' journey. However, she would like to stop by the Zweitan temple first because inhabitants of other worlds arrive through one of the 4 temples in this universe and from there depart for the Demon King's castle. But Sensei's goal is not to defeat the Demon King, it's to find Second. Therefore, they need to visit these 4 temples to gather information. Since the group will have to travel the entire world to do this, Tama asks if the elf is crazy, but the truth is she just doesn't want Sensei to face the Demon King because she fears for his safety, even though it's her mission as a guide. Faced with this, Tama comments that the cleric must really like the human. She tries to explain that it's not exactly as the cat girl thinks, but that Sensei showed her the light when she had already lost hope in her work. Tama asks what will happen if this second turns out to be his girlfriend, and Annette confesses that she's on the journey to find that out as well. The cat girl agrees to accompany the group, but only until her hometown. By the way, she wants to know if they'll be able to enter the temple since Annette abandoned her job. The elf assures her that the head priestess of the Zweitan temple is a great friend and will let them in. Moreover, she didn't leave the job without notice because she sent her familiar to deliver the resignation letter. Tama asks if it's that creature eating Sensei's head, so Annette retrieves the familiar and discovers that it didn't even do what it was asked to do, so she throws it away. Scared, the bat is consoled by the man who understands that the familiar returned to its beloved mistress, but that she is furious because of the undone task. Either way, he names the familiar Milos, making the creature happy and spinning in the sky. With that, the human goes back to sleep while Annette tries to accept that she left her job without warning. Suddenly, Milos panics and starts screaming, then quickly flies away. No one understands what's going on until a strong wind hits the group, revealing a dragon that lands in front of them. The girls think they won't make it out alive until a girl appears behind them and commands Ruka to calm down. Approaching the beast, she recites some words in a strange language and strokes the creature's snout, calming it with the sound of her voice. Annette and Tama can hardly believe what they're seeing, so they ask who this girl is, but instead of answering, she emphasizes that this is a very dangerous place. She reinforces this by noting the coffin behind the girls, which means they have already suffered a loss. However, Sensei shows up and asks if it's time to eat. The two apologize, explaining that this guy is a bit eccentric and comes from another world. Upon discovering that he's a foreigner, the Dragon Master decides to kill him because her goal is to destroy all inhabitants of other worlds. When attacked with magic, Annette conjures a shield that holds for a few seconds, but the barrier soon breaks, allowing the magic to destroy everything around them. Weakened, Annette and Tama use the little energy they have left to stand up and protect Sensei. In response, the enemy casts another spell that stuns them and displays the mark of the Demon King of Wrath. Despite Annette's despair, Sensei Sensei stands up and says that this dangerous behavior must stop because the dragon's problem is with the inhabitants of other worlds, not these two locals. With that, he steps in front of the girl and says he is her opponent, not the other two, and she can do whatever she wants because he's prepared to die at any moment. Without hesitation, the girl thrusts her hand into the human's chest, ending his life. As she leaves, she reveals that her name is Waldelia and hopes that the being from another world finally rests in peace. Despite this, Sensei gets up and acknowledges that Waldelia harbors deep hatred. In fact, he once wanted to harm someone so badly that he sent a threatening letter. At that time, he lost himself in his own anger, and knowing that feeling, he assumes this girl is going through the same thing. He touches Waldelia's face, who is shocked seeing the scene as if she were in front of a ghost or some kind of undead. Sensei sees the sadness in her eyes and asks her the reason, but Waldelia decides to flee as quickly as possible, calling Ruka to take her away. High in the sky on the dragon's back, she wonders who that man is. Days later, in the region of Donnerstag, the head priestess of the Zweiten Temple hears someone knocking at the door during a storm. Opening the door, Usha sees a familiar in the shape of a flying carpet carrying a man and two injured women. The priestess recognizes Annette among the three and holds her in her arms, but the cleric warns that the biggest problem is the man. With that, the temple leader asks for all the healing potions to be brought as well as all available priests. The next day, all patched up Sensei took advantage of the beautiful sunny afternoon to drop by the market and take a sip of a poison that was being sold at one of the street stalls. Tama questioned how the guy had the courage to do that right after being miraculously healed, and he replied that he recovered so well that he actually felt worse. Regardless of the nonsense the man spoke, Tama slapped the bottle out of his hand, making it fall to the ground. Right then, Annette thanked her priestess friend for the help and vowed to repay her in some way. Besides that, she asked if her friend knew a being from another world named Sakin, but Usha didn't know who that was. Speaking of which, Usha questioned why her colleague was traveling with a being from another world, especially after leaving her job without notice. Either way, the priestess was relieved to hear the news because she always thought Annette was too pure for a job like that. However, traveling with a transferred human is very questionable because transferred ones are known for their dubious character, especially when they receive the gift to face the Demon King. These powerful abilities usually go to the humans' heads, making them extremely vain and egocentric. In the meantime, out of nowhere, a rapper named Kotaro invited the elves to have fun with him while he dropped a contagious flow. His super powerful ability is mass production, which multiplies money infinitely, and he was willing to spend some of that cash on them. After kicking the rapper out rudely, Usha used that human as an example to illustrate what the transferred ones are like, but Annette explained that Sensei is not like the others. About that, Usha already knew just by looking at the guy's face, because it was certainly the face of a destructive man, and she believed that this human would ruin her friend's life if she insisted on traveling with him. The thing is, Sensei changed Annette's life, and she understood that she wouldn't be who she is now if she hadn't met him. Speaking of the devil, Sensei showed up asking for money to buy medicine, and while dropping a bunch of coins into his hand, Annette emphasized that this guy is not destructive at all. Despite thinking that he had already destroyed Annette herself, Usha questioned what gift this transferred one had, assuming it couldn't be much since their group was defeated easily. Then her friend explained that he had no power at all, but still he risked his own life to save her and Tama from the Demon King of Wrath. In shock, Usha wanted to know what story that was, because the Demon King of Wrath had been destroyed by another transferred one a week ago. Meanwhile, in a dark castle, a man told a dragon that it could bark all it wanted because its master was not coming back. Sitting on the beast master's bloody throne, the man said he had already dealt with him. Near the castle, Waldelia assumed her father was inside. Upon hearing that the Demon King of Wrath had already been destroyed, Tama was also shocked, and Annette thought that this would finally bring peace back to Zauberberg. The Catwoman celebrated, but wondered who that girl with the dragon was then. Moreover, Sensei himself had arrived a week ago, and if the danger had already been eliminated, it wouldn't make sense to bring another transferred one here. At that moment, Sensei tore up the papers he was writing on and lay down on the ground, asking the girls to write on his tombstone, "Here lies a writer who doesn't write." Tama asked what he was up to, and Sensei explained that he had tried to translate his experiences in this new world into words, but had so far failed to write anything, and that was driving him to despair. Rubbing her hands, Annette asked how the author described their first meeting meeting, but froze upon learning that the guy hadn't mentioned a word about her. On the other hand, when he met Waldelia, he felt a wave of creativity, and for that reason he couldn't understand why he was stuck. Faced with this, Annette invited the guy for a walk around the city to relax a bit, as she had already been thinking about buying some things for him. Said and done, the elf dragged the human to the market and gave him armor the size of a giant because she didn't want him getting stabbed in the chest by some random hand anymore. Unable to walk inside the armor, Sensei received his helmet in the end. Annette asked him not to go anywhere without them, but he ended up staying behind when they continued on their way. Usha was passing by and got startled by the man in armor, so he explained that he was looking for new inspiration in the city. Taking advantage of meeting the writer, the elf announced that from now on Annette would stay with her, because the young woman trusted people too much and Usha was sure that the transferred one would ruin her in some way. Sensei said that the cleric was not a bird in a cage, so she could decide what to do with her life on her own. In the middle of this discussion, a transferred one appeared, drawing everyone's attention. Dropping the flow, Kotaro announced the arrival of the man created by the heavens to be above all, and his name was Suzuki. Soon the champion transferred one called the people of Vale and informed everyone that the demon king of wrath had been defeated, so peace would reign again in this world. Speaking of which, everyone owed this peace to the transferred ones who brought the victory, and for that reason Suzuki announced the great era of heroes which would be ruled by them. Meanwhile, Kotaro pointed to Annette and denounced that it was the elf who was violent with him. Faced with this, Suzuki approached the cleric, questioning how she could act against a hero who had brought peace back to Zauberberg. Upon reaching her, the transferred one placed his hand on the elf's head and asked her to be a good girl. Shortly after, amid the burning city of Vale, Sensei found inspiration to write his masterpiece. It so happened that Suzuki had used a skill to turn Annette into a pet. The transformation caused mutations in some parts of the elf's body, such as her eyes, which acquired darkened contours. Kotaro uses his rap to mock the fact that the purer a person is, the easier they fall into this spell, which was the case with the victim. Tama confronts the rapper, but Suzuki uses the same technique on the Catwoman, taming her just like her companion. With this, the human boasts about the power of this skill, claiming that no one is capable of escaping it. Emerging from the crowd, Usha steps forward to confront the transferee, stating that this was not how she taught Suzuki to use his gift. As she declares that the city of Vale will not bow to the whims of the human, all the inhabitants join the priestess's chorus and rise against the oppressor. Seeing this, Suzuki sends his wolves against the population, saying he will destroy everything to build another city in its place, given that Vale does not want to surrender. Usha calls the human a bastard, and he sarcastically responds that he prefers to be called a hero, just as the elf did when they first met. To further provoke, he assures that he will use Usha's church as his private castle. Shortly after, due to the wolves' power, which spit fireballs at the city's houses, Vale begins to burn. Even Tama attacks the residents, and one of the victims is Sensei, who is protected by his gigantic armor. After dozens of kicks and punches to the equipment, the girl manages to crack the steel until she destroys the armor, but the immense force she applied ended up throwing the armor's helmet at her head, knocking Tama out instantly. Thus, Sensei locks Tama in a barrel and leaves a warning that there is a violent cat inside. At that moment, he sees Usha being overwhelmed in battle. Enraged, the elf tells Sensei that this is how the transferees act in this world, using the gift they received for their selfish ends. Usha emphasizes that Suzuki was not like this when he arrived. On the contrary, he was a calm boy with a weak personality. As she starts this story, Sensei begins to write down what is said, as this type of character intrigues him. For this reason, the author asks which way the transferee went, and Usha says he headed towards the church, but reminds the writer that he does not have a gift, therefore he will have no chance against Suzuki. Regardless, all Sensei wants is to write his masterpiece, something he felt compelled to do. Not wanting to let the man go alone, Usha accompanies him. Upon reaching the church gate, Sensei is enchanted by the beauty and grandeur this place exudes. On the other hand, Usha cannot understand how this man can be so carefree, as the transferee possesses superhuman power, so it would be wise to have a plan before entering the church. That said, Sensei takes a vial of poison and drinks it all. Usha was thinking of silently approaching the back door, but the human had already opened the door by then. Inside, Sensei admits that he is interested in Suzuki's story and would love to write a novel based on what the transferee experienced. Faced with this statement, Suzuki becomes even more arrogant, having an author wanting to write about his heroic exploits in another world. However, Sensei notes that it is quite the opposite. The story is about a man who gains more power than he deserves and ends up falling into his own greed. Insulted, Suzuki promises not to let it go unpunished, so he orders his wolves to kill the intruders. Seeing that Sensei will not lift a finger to prevent his death, Usha steps forward and shoots rays of light to kill some wolves, but one of them grabs the cleric's magic staff with its teeth, taking her out of the fight. With this, Suzuki orders the other wolves to shoot flames at the writer, and this time Usha cannot do anything. However, when the fireballs approach, Sensei deflects them, all using the helmet of the armor he wore, throwing the flames back at the attackers, causing a massive explosion. The helmet then reveals that it was actually Milos deflecting the spells, as Annette had said that the armor was capable of deflecting first-level spells. After the flames dissipate, Kotaro begins to worry that these enemies are not as weak as they thought, but Suzuki reminds him that he still has a trump card, the giant wolf. Without delay, the transferee uses his #1 pet to bite Sensei, which indeed happens. The bite draws blood from the man's shoulder until the poison spreads through the animal's body, killing it instantly. While Usha heals, the human Kotaro panics at what he witnessed, so he runs away from there. Usha demands the transferee surrender, but Suzuki is not done yet, as he saved his big trump card for the end. As soon as he orders Annette to attack, the elf draws a dagger and charges at Usha, who never imagined this would happen one day. The priestess refuses to fight against her friend, so she intends to retreat, but Sensei has a better idea. While he takes the lead in the fight, he tells Usha that Annette is stronger than she thinks. Suzuki laughs at the writer's attitude, believing that his domestication skill cannot be cancelled, but Sensei is sure that the elf can still choose her own destiny, and it is not Suzuki who will dictate it for her. With her neck against Annette's blade, Sensei asserts that his companion is not a bird in a cage. As she heard these words, the elf held the blade with her own hand, as if she were in an internal struggle between beheading the human or sparing him. Losing patience, Suzuki reinforces his commands, using more mana, causing Annette to feel physical pain from the internal conflict. Inside her consciousness, she was like a bird in a cage until Sensei appeared to say something that encouraged the elf to stab the dagger into her own leg. Having done that, she collapses and Sensei catches the cleric before she falls. She then returns to normal to Usha's relief. Speaking of which, Sensei asks the priestess to heal her friend, which she does while recalling when the human claimed that Annette was not as weak as Usha thought. Suzuki drops his mask of arrogance and reveals a real fear as he watches his main skill being dismantled right in front of him. Impulsively, he grabs the dagger on the ground and nearly takes his own life with it. However, Sensei stops him because he needs the boy alive to finish his book. Speaking of which, the author questions Suzuki about his story to continue his project. Whether intentional or not, this question takes the boy back to his past on Earth, where he was a weak kid who couldn't stand up to the bullying he endured. Suffering verbal and physical abuse almost daily, Suzuki was treated like a pet by older kids, like a mistreated dog who could do nothing but stay there and take the beating. Incidentally, the way he describes his condition is a way to explain his gift in Zauberberg, which allows him to control other beings. The only escape Suzuki saw was ending his own life, but he didn't even have the courage to do that. His life was surrounded by the consequences of his cowardice in the face of people's cruelty, and in that environment he felt that no one could help him in any way. Then one day Suzuki was hit by the truck that brought him to Zauberberg. In this world, unlike on Earth, where he was a miserable sufferer, he is now a hero with the responsibility to save this place from the tyrannical grip of the Demon King of Wrath, using a gift that made him extremely powerful. As time passed, Suzuki adapted to the environment and his domestication ability, eventually bringing wild wolves to his side to be his companions. Even so, despite the promise of being a hero in this world, Suzuki wasn't treated as as such. On the contrary, the inhabitants of Zauberberg were as malicious as the humans on Earth. The difference now was that the boy had the power to react, and he wouldn't let this opportunity slip by. In any case, Suzuki doesn't believe he's done anything truly wrong because in his mind, no matter which world he inhabits, he will always be a nobody without determination as he is now. After the transferred one tells his story, Sensei is satisfied to conclude his novel based on Suzuki, a weak man who hoped to live as a hero in another world but couldn't even become a villain due to his own weakness. That's why Sensei titles the book Failure in Another World. Sensei thanks the kid for providing the necessary content for a book, but he can't call this novel a masterpiece. For this reason, Sensei tears out one of the pages, creating a magical circle to summon transfer student. With the circle's power flowing in reverse, Suzuki is sent back to where he came from. Shocked by what she saw, Annette checks Sensei's status and notices that he now possesses the gift of writing, and Usha believes this might be a special ability only activated against other transfers, which could mean the author was brought to Zauberberg specifically to fight these humans who were supposed to be the heroes of this magical world. Frustrated, Sensei collapses to the ground, utterly dejected after failing once again to write his definitive work. In his mind, he wonders if he will ever find the person who will inspire him in the best way, but he's certain that day hasn't come yet. Watching the dramatic scene, Usha wonders who this guy really is. Finally, despite having caused the boy's return to Earth, Sensei asks what happened to Suzuki. In the middle of Vale City, the wolves that were once tamed by the transfer students lost their imaginary collars and were now free to leave. Likewise, Tama was no longer Suzuki's pet. Emerging from inside a barrel after all this confusion, she freaks out, not understanding anything that happened. Meanwhile, Usha gives Sensei what he wanted most, a brand new coffin with impeccable craftsmanship and golden details that match the object's intense black. After that, Usha talks to Annette about how this human might play an important role in Zauberberg and that his journey will certainly be very difficult and painful. Annette thinks the priestess will prevent her from accompanying the man for this reason, just as she did the first time. However, now Usha insists that her friend stay by Sensei's side precisely to protect him from the evils to come in this world. With everything in place before Sensei leaves, Usha asks him if Suzuki became like this because he gained more power than he deserved, but the author isn't sure if that was the main reason. Either way, Usha fears that the young man will return to a miserable life in his original world, but Sensei doesn't believe Suzuki will repeat the same story he's lived so far. It's up to him to decide if he will write his masterpiece or not based on what he learned and suffered in Zauberberg. Speaking of which, Suzuki has already returned, submitting his resume at the local market to get his normal life back. The interviewer asks why the young man dropped out of school, and this question brings back memories of Zauberberg that justify his absence. Seeing that the interviewee became anxious with the question, the man understands it must be a delicate subject and decides to give Suzuki a chance, asking him to start his new job tomorrow. As he leaves the market, the boy feels the cold of the snow along with the sound of the wind and extends his hands to appreciate the snowflakes melting on his skin. Meanwhile, in Sontag, a northeastern region of Zauberberg, the renowned Weiss Cathedral is attended by members of the Papal State, including Usha and Bishop Wolf, a clergyman bold enough to drink within the sanctuary. According to him, reality is for those who can't handle alcohol. On the other hand, the drink helps him endure the stinky dwarves he has to deal with every day, unlike his colleague who works with the demi in her jurisdiction. Suddenly, a servant of God with a strangely demonic appearance reminds Wolf that he shouldn't make such prejudiced comments in the Papal State. Being the first non-elf appointed as a priest, this goblin reached the rank of archbishop through exemplary work, which doesn't necessarily please all church members. Feeling provoked, Wolf points his finger at his colleague's face and asks if the goblin wants to switch jurisdictions with him, since he always gets the hardest jobs. The colleague reminds him that the tasks clerics receive depend on their behavior in the church, meaning the elf should correct his habits instead of pointing fingers at others. During this exchange, Cardinal Miller asks everyone present to take a seat. With everyone at the table, he would like to request that each member report on their their region, but first he needs to address another matter. Interrupting the meeting, a clumsy cleric arrives at Weiss Cathedral via teleportation, stumbling and falling face first in front of her colleagues. As the others didn't recognize her, the cardinal introduces her as the new bishop of the Erston Temple and takes the opportunity to ask everyone to introduce themselves to the newcomer while giving their reports. First up is Annette's substitute in the Deanstark region, the Holy Land of Mountains and Flames. Her name is Aria, an inexperienced cleric who forgets to mention that Charlotte, the daughter of the King of Roth, inherited the throne, earning a scolding from the cardinal. After this blunder, the goblin finally introduces himself as Elton, Archbishop of the Virden Temple in the Midwalk region, the Holy Land of Lakes and Water, where according to him peace reigns under his jurisdiction, a testament to the Pope's authority. He also warns Aria that it is strictly prohibited to be late, putting a look of panic on the young elf's face. Next, Wolf introduces himself as the cleric of the Dritten Temple located in the Samstag region. This is the Holy Land of deserts and earth, and although it is far from the other regions, they are managing well. The cardinal mentions frequent conflicts among the dwarves, and Wolf highlights that he was almost assaulted while trying to mediate a dispute. Lastly, Usher reports that she leads the Zweiden Temple. A few days ago, in her jurisdiction of Donnerstag, the Holy Land of forests and wind, an otherworldly inhabitant went on a rampage and destroyed half of the city of Vale, and Usha is mobilizing labor to repair the area. By coincidence, Miller convened this meeting to discuss the transferred individuals, as the Demon King of Wrath was defeated by a group of these summoned humans. Consequently, the Pope decided to seal the magic circles that connect the other world to Zauberberg to stop the summoning of transferred individuals. With this news, Elton expresses joy at seeing his people free from the Demon King, while Wolf is glad to be rid of the humans. However, Miller announces that this story is far from over, as the 7 transferred individuals who defeated the Demon King of Wrath have taken the demon's lands for themselves. Recently, the Pope received a declaration from the 7 stating that they would use their power to transform Zauberberg into a utopia. This situation was a real blow to the Pope, who believed the transferred individuals were angels sent to save this world. These beings, once considered children by the papal authority, now see him as prey. In other words, a war has been declared between the transferred individuals and the World Church of Helsahan, as these true fallen angels begin to show their claws in various regions of the Free Kingdom. Likewise, Waldelia, the daughter of the Demon King of Wrath, cannot be ignored for possibly harboring a burning desire for revenge. In light of these events, Miller announces that Zauberberg has entered a new era, and it is the Church's mission to overcome these obstacles and maintain peace. Aria questions how they will be able to face such powerful beings, and this question triggers Usha, who recalls the image of Sensei cutting through the sky with his power before a mighty transferred individual. She then declares that she met a transferred individual in Vale capable of returning others summoned to their world of origin through his gift. Upon hearing these words, the Pope himself agrees with his friend Usha, as he also believes this angel could be Zauberberg's hope. As he approaches and sees his subjects kneeling before his holiness, he asks Usha to tell more about this human. Meanwhile, on the other side of the trenches, a woman hums a cheerful song that contrasts with the dark environment that once belonged to the most powerful demon. Nearby, a man wants to know if the lady is thinking about her beloved again, but she ignores the question. As 2 glasses of wine are served at the table by the man, aware that his question won't be answered, he informs her that their allies have departed for various lands, while the 2 of them stayed to observe what is in store for this world. In the meantime, what awaits the exhausted Annette and Tama is a well-deserved rest in the city they just arrived at before hitting the road again toward Grun. As soon as she celebrates the opportunity to sleep in a warm bed, the cat receives the news that she has leveled up to 17 from carrying the coffin, so much making her wonder if this is something to celebrate. Keeping an eye on the conversation, a kid points out the direction of the town's inn and offers any information that might help the travelers. Since they don't know the area, they sit with the boy to better understand their surroundings. First, he tells them about an organization called the Hero Introduction induction service, also known as the transferred order service, where people are assigned to accompany groups with little self-confidence and provide them with a safe and comfortable journey. By the way, it was the boy himself who created this service. Hearing this, Tama doesn't recall having a good experience with transferred people, so she can't help but show a sour face. The kid takes offense at the cat's disdain because according to him, the transferred are heroes sent to save this world. In fact, if the ladies hire this service, he can introduce them to a summoned hero right now for just 4 zinzenzenzengenicos. Tama is ready to refuse the offer, but Annette cuts her off, already handing the money to the boy. Tama reminds her that 4 zinzenzenzen doesn't grow on trees, but the elf thinks it's pocket change if it means keeping Sensei safe. At the same time, the boy makes a face like he's taken advantage and asserts that a life has no price because the dead man in the coffin is surely seeking his safety in the other world and would be smiling in heaven if he knew a hero was accompanying his 2 friends. With that said, Sensei opens the coffin and apologizes for still being alive, almost giving the boy a heart attack as he yells that the corpse said something. Sensei feels offended because although he wants to become one, he is not yet a dead man. Annette assures the boy that the man is a hero, but the kid doesn't think heroes look like zombified vampires. In any case, he grabs the 4 zinzenzenzen from the elf's hand and runs off, not without first saying his name is Nur. Despite looking like a scam, he promises to bring a real hero to the ladies. Tama thinks it's a good idea to have this so-called hero carry the coffin, but the cleric insists on keeping that task for herself. When night falls, the innkeeper is tired of having these people hanging around the reception, so she wants to know if they are staying the night or not. Annette says again that they are waiting for someone, although Sensei knows very well that the boy will not return. According to the author, that rascal has the eyes of an adult. Hearing this description, the rabbit girl deduces they are talking about Nur, the bigmouth, the most wretched and talkative little guy in all of Zauberberg. Upon realizing this, Annette is furious at seeing her 4 zinzenzenzen go down the drain, while Sensei is curious to know Nur, the bigmouth's story. The rabbit girl explains that he is an orphan who started living in the town at some point and makes a living by deceiving unsuspecting visitors. Since there is no adult to educate the boy, he keeps fooling people indiscriminately. Honestly, the innkeeper feels sorry for him sometimes, but that doesn't change the fact that he is deceiving people with this hero story. According to her, if heroes really existed, Nur shouldn't be a street kid in the first place. Far from there, the boy never really had a hero to save him. The reflection seen in the fine blade he carries is only of himself, the only person he has had as company in this lonely journey. That is, except when some people decide to take advantage of a mistake or even steal his belongings, which, although stolen, are the child's means of survival, as he has few ways to protect himself. One of the regional bandit groups takes advantage of the boy's fragility, counting the coins, and notes he has gathered in his path as a child thief, and all Nur wants to know is what they are going to do with him. One of the thugs asks the same question back, making the boy swallow dryly. Then comes the desperation, making him bluff that his transferred friends won't let it slide if he disappears, but the truth is different. The transferred ones the bigmouth mentioned are the very ones who kidnapped him. Showing off his firepower, the leader of the trio displays his crossbow capable of piercing a dragon's armor, the insane weapon. Then he comments that the kid has been making money using the names of the 3 transferred ones, so he will have the honor of bragging in the afterlife about being killed by a hero. With that, with the insane weapon pointed at his head, Nur wonders if these are the heroes who will save the world. Until then, he had never seen a transferred one before, and let's say his first experience is one that turns his life upside down. But before the fatal shot, Sensei arrives and points the transferred one's crossbow at the other's knee, who screams in pain. Another thug uses his divine analysis and discovers that Sensei is also summoned from another world. However, seeing that the man only has 1 life point and is poisoned, he dismisses him as a threat. Thus, the trio's leader points his crossbow at the intruder, who suddenly begins to increase his own HP monstrously. As always, Sensei jokes about the possibility of dying, so he asks the aggressor to shoot him straight in the heart. So as the saying goes, the madman is only mad until he finds a madder one. Respecting this maxim, the tender trio of Groon's surroundings runs away. Soon Nur asks if Sensei is a hero, but the writer doesn't see himself in that glorious way. According to him, adults are young people who have been betrayed, but Nur is still a child who is not ready to become an adult. As he philosophized randomly, the author was leaving the dump, leaving the boy tied up. Nur asks if that's really going to be it, and in Sensei's silence we can assume it is. The next day, the group prepares to head to Grun, and Sensei is pure exhaustion after spending most of the night chasing off transferred ones. Annette is incredibly jealous, thinking that the man was sweet-talking with another lady, especially when he confesses that it was a very pleasant night. Suddenly, the big myth is shameless enough to show his face in front of those he robbed yesterday, but he assures them he didn't lie to anyone. As everyone remembers, he promised to introduce them to a brave warrior, and this hero is standing right in front of them. If you're enjoying this journey, don't forget to hit that like button. Your support helps motivate me to keep bringing you each episode. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. See you in the next episode.